There's a certain hum to life, isn't there? A rhythm you don't notice until it starts to feel like static, buzzing just beneath the surface of every day. I'm Lily, 31 years old, and for the most part, I've got a good thing going. I've been married to Jacob for 6 years now, and if I had to describe him in a handful of words, I'd say he's the kind of man who makes you feel safe but never bored. He's kind, steady as a rock, but there's this playful streak in him that sneaks out when you least expect it. He's always hunting for little ways to keep our marriage alive, to toss a spark into the mix and see what catches fire. We've built a comfortable life together in our suburban home, a cozy little nest with mismatched throw pillows and a backyard that's more weeds than grass. We share a love for adventure, for trying new things, whether it's a spontaneous road trip or experimenting with some weird recipe that inevitably ends in laughter and takeout. But lately, I've felt this quiet itch, a whisper in the back of my mind that our routine, nice as it is, might be just a little too routine. Over the past few months, I've noticed something among our friends. Couples we know, people we've shared brunches and game nights with, have started diving into these shared experiences to spice things up. They're signing up for pottery classes, tackling escape rooms, planning themed date nights with elaborate costumes and all. At first, I thought it was kind of cute, maybe a bit over the top, but I couldn't help but wonder if Jacob and I were missing out on something. There's a part of me that's been craving a jolt, something to shake us out of the everyday and remind us why we fell for each other in the first place. I didn't say it out loud, not at first, but I think Jacob sensed it too. He's always been good at reading me, sometimes better than I read myself. Then, a couple of weeks ago, he came home with this glint in his eye, holding his phone like he'd just struck gold. He'd stumbled across an advertisement for something called Mind Unlocked. It was billed as a couple's escape room experience, but not just any escape room. This was a psychological reality game, complete with live actors who interact with you, weaving immersive scenarios that supposedly test your limits. I remember staring at the ad over his shoulder, the sleek black and red design promising an experience unlike any other. My first reaction was a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Live actors, psychological games. It sounded intense, maybe even a little weird. But Jacob was so excited, his enthusiasm infectious, and I figured, why not? At worst, it'd be a funny story to tell over drinks. At best, it'd be a chance to bond, to step outside our comfort zone together. So, I agreed, thinking it was just a harmless way to spend a Saturday evening. The drive to the venue felt like a mini adventure in itself. Jacob had the radio on low, some indie playlist humming through the speakers as we wound through the outskirts of town. The city lights faded behind us, replaced by long stretches of empty road and the occasional gas station glowing like a lonely beacon. I kept stealing glances at him, his hands steady on the wheel, a small smirk playing on his lips like he knew something I didn't. I couldn't tell if it was nerves or excitement bubbling in my chest, maybe a mix of both. After about 20 minutes, we turned onto a gravel lot in front of a nondescript industrial building that looked more like an abandoned warehouse than a place for fun and games. A flickering neon sign hung crooked above the entrance, buzzing faintly with the words, "Mind Unlocked" in electric blue. The whole place had this eerie, mysterious aura, like we'd stumbled onto the set of a gritty thriller. We parked the car, the crunch of gravel under the tires louder than I expected in the quiet night. I let out a nervous giggle, and Jacob turned to me, his own laugh mirroring mine. "You ready for this, Lil?" he asked, his voice light but tinged with something I couldn't quite place. I nodded, though my stomach did a little flip as we stepped out into the cool air and made our way toward the entrance. A stern-looking host in a crisp black suit stood waiting for us, his face unreadable, like he'd seen 1,000 couples come through those doors and knew exactly how this would play out. He handed us each a clipboard with a waiver to sign. His voice clipped as he muttered something about standard procedure. I skimmed the fine print. Words like emotional distress and unforeseen circumstances jumped out at me. But I signed anyway, chalking it up to legal overkill. Stepping inside, I felt like we'd crossed into another world. The dimly lit corridors stretched out before us, flickering fluorescent lights casting long, jittery shadows on walls painted in deep crimson and black. The air was thick with a cinematic kind of tension, like we were walking onto a movie set rather than into a game. Every detail screamed intentional, peeling paint in just the right spots, faint scratches on the walls that looked almost too real. And then there were the sounds, soft whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, distant footsteps echoing down unseen hallways. It was immersive, I'll give them that, but it also sent a tiny shiver down my spine. I grabbed Jacob's arm, half joking, half serious, and whispered, "If this turns into a real horror movie, you're saving me, right?" He just chuckled and pulled me closer as we followed the host deeper into the building. We were led into a small briefing room where a handful of other couples were already seated, their faces a mix of excitement and apprehension. The host stood at the front, his tone flat but commanding as he laid out the rules. "Each room," he explained. As the host's voice faded into the background, I felt a strange shift in the air, like the rules he was reciting were just the surface of something much deeper. After the briefing, Jacob and I were separated, which caught me off guard. They said it was part of the experience, that we'd each face individual challenges before reuniting. I gave him a quick squeeze on the hand, trying to mask the unease creeping into my chest, and then I was led away by a silent staff member dressed in a stark white lab coat. His face was expressionless, his movements mechanical, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. We walked down a narrow, sterile hallway, the walls a cold, clinical gray, and with every step, the air seemed to grow heavier, colder. My sneakers echoed softly against the tiled floor, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence. Up ahead, a door loomed, its faded label reading Ward 7 in stark black letters. My stomach twisted as the staff member pushed it open without a word, gesturing for me to step inside. The room I entered looked like something straight out of a hospital nightmare. A flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh, uneven shadows across the space. A metal examination table sat against one wall, its surface gleaming under the cold light, and the faint smell of antiseptic stung my nose. My eyes darted around, taking in every unsettling detail. A tray of medical tools, scalpels, forceps, syringes, resting on a rolling cart, their edges catching the light. Faded charts pinned to the wall, covered in scribbled notes I couldn't decipher. And in the center of the room, a single chair, its metal frame looking more like a restraint than a seat. My heart was racing now, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself this was all part of the game, just an elaborate setup to mess with my head, but the realism of it all was starting to gnaw at me. Then I saw him. A tall man in his late 30s stood near the far wall, dressed in a thin patient's robe, the kind that ties at the back and leaves you feeling exposed. His name was Miles, or at least that's what he told me as he turned to face me. He had sharp features, a chiseled jawline, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to look right through me. There was something magnetic about him, but also unnerving, like he knew things he shouldn't. His voice was low, serious, almost too calm as he fixed me with that intense gaze and said, "Here, we'll test your response to control." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication, and I felt a prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. I nodded, not sure what else to do, and sat down on the chair as he gestured for me too. The metal was cold against my skin, and I felt so small under his scrutiny, like I was being dissected without him even touching me. Miles started asking questions, his tone steady but probing, like a doctor peeling back layers of your mind. They weren't the kind of questions I expected in a game like this. He asked about my fears, the things that keep me up at night, the shadows I don't even admit to myself. He asked about my desires, the secret wants I've buried deep, the ones I'd never dare speak out loud. And then he asked about Jacob, how we met, what he means to me, if I've ever felt trapped by the life we've built. I hesitated, my answers coming out in stumbles and half-truths. I kept telling myself it was just part of the act, that I had to play along to move forward in the game. But every question felt like it was stripping me bare, leaving me raw and exposed in that sterile room. Then the atmosphere shifted. Miles stepped closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming, like the air itself was pressing down on me. I could smell the faint scent of soap on him, mixed with something sharper, almost metallic. My breath hitched as he reached out, his finger brushing lightly along my arm. The touch was so unexpected, so deliberate, that it sent a shiver racing through me, a jolt that I couldn't ignore even if I wanted to. My mind screamed to pull away, to remember where I was and who I was with. But my body betrayed me, frozen in place as Miles leaned in closer. His voice dropped to a whisper, laced with something dangerous, something that made my pulse hammer in my ears. I don't even remember what he said next, just the way his eyes locked onto mine, pulling me into a moment I knew I shouldn't have let happen. And yet, I did. I let it stretch on, let the line blur until it wasn't just a game anymore. When it was over, when I finally stumbled back from that edge, the weight of what I'd allowed crashed into me like a tidal wave. Now, as I push open the heavy door of Ward 7 and step into the hallway, my legs feel like they might give out beneath me. Each step is shaky, unsteady, like I'm walking on a tightrope with no net below. The corridor seems to stretch on forever, longer than it was when I first came through, the cold seeping into my bones through the thin walls. The flickering lights overhead cast eerie shadows that dance along the gray tiles, and every echo of my footsteps sounds too loud, like it's announcing my guilt to anyone who might be listening. My mind is a storm, a chaotic mess of emotions I can't untangle. There's guilt, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on my chest with every breath I take. Shame, too, burning hot under my skin, making me want to shrink into myself until I disappear. But beneath it all, there's something else. A lingering thrill, a dark little spark that I can't extinguish no matter how hard I try. It's like a splinter under my skin, sharp and persistent, reminding me of that moment with Miles, of how I let myself slip. I can feel the heat in my cheeks, a flush that won't fade no matter how much I will it away. My hands tremble as I shove them into my pockets, trying to hide the evidence of my unraveling. My breath keeps catching in my throat, short and ragged, like I've just run a marathon instead of walked out of a room. I try to steady myself, to pull it together, but it's like my body is a stranger to me now, reacting in ways I can't control. My mind keeps dragging me back to Ward 7, replaying every second of what happened with Miles. How could I let it go that far? How could I lose myself so completely in a moment that was supposed to be just a game? I keep asking myself these questions, but the answers don't come. Instead, there's this twisted fascination, a part of me that's almost curious about what it means, about why I didn't stop it sooner. It's a dangerous thought, one I try to shove down deep, but it keeps bubbling up, taunting me. I wonder about Jacob as I shuffle down this endless hallway. Did he face something like this in his own challenge? Was he pushed to the edge, tempted in ways he didn't expect? Or is he still the same steady, unshakable man I've always known, waiting for me on the other side of this nightmare, with no idea of the storm raging inside me? The thought that he might somehow know what I've done sends a fresh wave of panic through me. He's always been able to read me, to see through the masks I wear even when I think I've hidden everything. What if he looks at me and sees it all? The guilt, the shame, the secret I'm carrying like a weight around my neck. As I move forward, I start to notice other participants emerging from their own rooms along the corridor. Some look pale and shaken, their eyes wide as if they've seen something they can't unsee. Others are laughing, their voices sharp and brittle, like they're trying to cover up whatever they just went through. I feel so isolated among them, like I'm the only one carrying a secret this heavy. I keep my head down, avoiding their gazes, afraid that if I meet someone's eyes, they'll see right through me. The hallway finally opens up, and I see him, Jacob standing at the far end of the corridor, his silhouette framed by the dim light spilling from an exit sign above. My heart lurches, a mix of relief and dread knotting in my chest as I quicken my pace. Every step feels heavier, like I'm dragging the weight of Ward 7 behind me, the memory of Miles's touch still burning on my skin. I don't know what I expect to see on Jacob's face. Anger, disappointment, maybe even betrayal if he somehow knows. But as I get closer, he turns to face me, and his expression is unreadable. There's a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, but something else too. Something I can't quite place. It's not anger, not hurt, but it's not warmth either. It's like he's studying me, waiting for something, and I freeze under the weight of that gaze. I stop a few feet away, my breath shallow, my mind racing with 1,000 things I could say, 1,000 excuses I could make. But before I can open my mouth, before I can even brace myself for the storm I'm sure is coming, Jacob steps forward. In one swift motion, he pulls me into a tight hug, his arms wrapping around me with a warmth that feels so familiar, so safe, it almost breaks me. I'm stunned, my body stiff against his, my mind scrambling to catch up. I was expecting questions, accusations, anything but this. His embrace is firm, grounding, like he's trying to pull me back from wherever I've been lost. I can feel the steady beat of his heart against my chest, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the sterile air of this place, and for a moment, I let myself sink into it, even though I don't deserve it. But I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for him to pull away and ask me what happened, to demand an explanation for the way I'm trembling in his arms. My muscles are tense, my hands hovering awkwardly at my sides before I force myself to return the hug, though it feels like a lie. I don't know how to reconcile this warmth with the cold guilt still churning inside me. Then, just as I think I might crumble under the silence, Jacob pulls back slightly, just enough to look into my eyes. His hands stay on my shoulders, steady and sure, and when he speaks, his voice is calm, almost proud in a way that throws me completely off balance. "Challenge passed," he says, the words hanging between us like a riddle I can't solve. My mind spins, a dizzying whirl of confusion and disbelief. Challenge passed? What does that even mean? Does he know what happened in that room? Was this part of the game all along? Did he expect me to be tested like that, pushed to the edge in ways I never imagined? I open my mouth to ask, but the words trip over themselves, coming out as a stammered mess. What do you... how... I can't finish, my voice trailing off as I search his face for answers. But Jacob just gives me a faint smile, one that doesn't quite reach his eyes, and takes my hand. His grip is firm, almost possessive, as he starts leading me toward the exit, like he's already decided we're done here, like there's nothing more to say. I follow him, my legs moving on autopilot, but inside, I'm a storm of emotions I can't name. There's relief, sharp and sudden, that he's not angry, that he's not looking at me with disgust or betrayal. But there's confusion too, thick and suffocating, wrapping around his words like a fog I can't see through. Challenge passed. Did he face something similar in his own room? Was he pushed to confront parts of himself he didn't expect, just like I was? Or is there something more to this? Something he's not telling me? And then there's the creeping suspicion, the nagging thought, that maybe, just maybe, he was complicit in all of this. Maybe he knew what this game would do to me, what kind of challenges I'd... The car ride home is suffocating in its silence, the kind of quiet that presses against you like a physical weight. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, staring out the window as the dark landscape blurs past, the occasional streetlight casting fleeting shadows across the dashboard. Jacob's hands are steady on the wheel, just like they always are. But I can feel this unspoken tension hanging between us, thick and heavy, like a storm cloud waiting to break. I steal glances at him, trying to decipher something, anything, from the lines of his face. Is there a hint of suspicion in the set of his jaw? A flicker of knowing in the way his eyes stay fixed on the road? But he gives me nothing. His expression is a blank slate, unreadable, and it's driving me crazy. Every now and then, he hums softly to the faint tune crackling through the radio, some old song I can't quite place, acting as if the night we just lived through was nothing more than a quirky date. As if we didn't just walk out of a place that tore me apart from the inside. I want to scream, to shatter this quiet with questions, but my throat feels tight, like the words are trapped behind a wall I can't break through. I shift in my seat, the leather creaking under me, and let my mind wander back to everything that happened. I can still feel the cold metal of that chair in Ward 7 against my skin, the intensity of Miles's gaze burning into me, the way I let myself slip into something I never thought I was capable of. I crossed a line tonight, a boundary I didn't even know I had until I stepped over it. And the worst part? I don't feel the regret I thought I would. There's guilt, sure, gnawing at the edges of my conscience, but it's drowned out by this strange, intoxicating rush, a sense of liberation I can't shake. It's like I've unlocked a part of myself I didn't know existed, a part that craves the edge, the danger, the forbidden. And now that I've tasted it, I'm not sure I can lock it back up. My eyes flick to Jacob again, searching for any sign that he knows. Did he see something in his own challenge that mirrors what I went through? Was there footage, a hidden camera somewhere in that twisted game, feeding him glimpses of my betrayal? Or did he face his own temptations, his own dark corners, and come out just as changed as I feel? I want to ask him, to spill everything and see how he reacts, but something holds me back. Maybe it's fear of what his answer might be. Maybe it's the uncertainty itself, this fragile balance we're teetering on, that I'm not ready to tip. So I stay silent, letting the hum of the engine and the distant melody from the radio fill the void between us. When we finally pull into our driveway, the familiar sight of our house feels off. The porch light is on, casting a warm glow over the front steps, but it doesn't feel welcoming. It's like I'm seeing it through a stranger's eyes, like I don't quite belong here anymore. The mismatched throw pillows, the weeds in the backyard, the life we've built. It all seems foreign now, a little too small for the person I've become in just a few hours. Jacob cuts the engine, and for a moment, we just sit there, neither of us moving to get out. I can hear the faint tick of the cooling engine, the soft rustle of leaves outside, and I wonder if he feels it too. This shift, this fracture in the foundation of us. But then he turns to me, his face still unreadable, and leans over to press a gentle kiss to my forehead. It's a gesture so familiar, so tender, that it almost breaks me. I want to cling to it, to let it wash away the mess inside me. But instead, it just deepens the ache. He doesn't say a word as he steps out of the car and heads inside, leaving me sitting there, frozen, with the ghost of his touch lingering on my skin. I follow him a moment later, my steps heavy with uncertainty, yet propelled by the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, the warmth of our shared silence could mend what words could not. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.